Welcome back for video game news, but this is going to be a special edition of video game news. This is a 2020 recap to just look at a few things that happened in 2020. And I hope everyone out there is having at least so far halfway decent 2021. Let's hope things get better this year. But many of the things to happen this year. First, early on the year, at least for me personally, favorite game of the year came out. You hear music in the background from. That being Granblue Fantasy Versus. An interesting year for fighting games, not the biggest year overall. Yeah, we had awesome launch of Granblue Fantasy Versus. Currently my number 2 favorite Arc System Works game, only behind Under Night and Birth. But this was or rather 2020 was a year of DLC when it came to fighting games as a whole. We saw a lot of new DLC characters. Specifically, we got the last of the DLC for Granblue Fantasy Versus. We got more Power Rangers Battle for the Grid characters. Specifically, of course, we saw a new Samurai character, Scorpina, and a third character from Power Rangers. We also this year, or rather this past year, also saw the DLC for, well, the announcement DLC for upcoming season of course, Street Fighter V. Now, they of course push back Street Fighter V release. Of course, Dan Hibiki is to be the first of the new characters for Street Fighter V. Over time, we got, of course, also Street Fighter V Champion Edition. We got, of course, interesting characters like Gil and Seth. We also saw other DLC fighting game related wise. Probably the biggest of the DLCs, of course, we also had some Soul Calibur 6 releases for the year. Of course, we got an awesome DLC character, Holomaru, from Samurai Showdown. Well, plus DLC for Samurai Showdown as well, but for Soul Calibur 6, of course, we also saw them bringing back some classic characters such as Setsuka. Also, we got characters such as Hilda, and of course, the last of the Soul Calibur characters. We got, I believe it's Hwang, or I forget how properly pronounces the name, would be the final one of the DLC. Also, we would see new DLC stuff announced for Tekken 7 as well. And of course, definitely a fan favorite return, with, of course, that being Kunimitsu. We also saw new DLC characters for, obviously, Dead or Alive 6. We saw definitely 2020 was a big year for DLC for Mortal Kombat 11, where we got the Aftermath DLC story, which was great, by the way. We also got DLC for Shiva. We got DLC characters such as Fujin, which was a nice return. We got Robocop, which, on Robocop for me. We also got Rambo in the next DLC. And, of course, two major fan favorite returns with Melina and, of course, Rain. Then we saw many other things. Now, outside of fine games, we saw many, of course, game delays, and then announcements, releases. This was actually a major year when it came to indie games. Definitely a good one. Got to have some really good indie games I personally really enjoyed, such as Windbound, which was pretty good. You could tell I had certain influences, I think, more from Legend of Zelda Wind Waker more so than Breath of the Wild. Except maybe the glider, but still, in my opinion, yeah, it's a good survival crafting game. There's definitely quite a few survival crafting games that were released this year. Plus, we got the family-friendly equivalent to Diablo, with, of course, that being Minecraft Dungeons, which is a divisive game. It's pretty much either you enjoy it or you hate it type of game. And a lot of people that I normally agree with a lot of stuff on games, I disagree with. I enjoy Minecraft Dungeons for the simplicity of the game. Also, I will say this was a big year in general for games. Of course, we also in games we got Resident Evil 3 remake this year, or this last year, whatever, past tense. But we got that. We got an interesting, of course, melody rhythm game with Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, which is an interesting game to say the least. Definitely nothing like any other Kingdom Hearts game that's ever come before, that's for sure. Also, we had some other really big names in games return for the year. We had a lot of Ubisoft stuff come out. We, of course, saw a new Watch Dogs game, which actually is probably the most, I would say, most positive response out of the Watch Dogs games. This is by far the one I think that is probably the most liked by people. Also, we saw the return of Resident Evil with Resident Evil 3 Remake, though a lot of people did not like the multiplayer mode that came with it. We also got Final Fantasy stuff. We got a not so good HD release. That is, of course, the HD release of Crystal Chronicles, which is an underrated game, but from everything I've seen, too many bug issues with that. Also, this was a year for definitely a lot of games with glitches and other issues. We had two major releases over the year. We saw Marvel's Avengers, which, well, that didn't turn out to be too good, but as bad as we thought it was, it wouldn't hold a candle to the next game launch. CD Projekt Red, and of course that being Cyberpunk 2077, was easily the biggest disaster of the year gaming-wise. We would also see the revival of classic games. Specifically, we would see the revival of a little series, classic in my opinion, of beat-em-ups, Streets of Rage 4, which I am definitely happy that it got revived, thank goodness. And briefly, you could get a limited run version, though now it's gone like a massive, physical release. I think because they saw how high in demand and how much people actually wanted. Sort of similar to a situation when Power Rangers Battle for the Grid would actually get a major release this year. Well, 2020. So definitely interesting year, and also many other great indie games. That's the thing. This 2020 was a major year for indie games, not just in my opinion, big things such as Windbound, but you had many other highly praised indie games that would come out for the year. Um, I would say Evans. I forget, dang it, the rest of the name, but it was a great platformer puzzle game. We would see many other things as well come out. We would see many major disasters. Of course, we would see actually the launch of, new console generation, the 9th console generation, with the Xbox Series S/X and the PS5, regular and digital. We would see the announcements of major upcoming titles, though will be again released sometime in 2021. One specific, I think, major title announcement was, of course, the successor or spiritual successor to Silent Hill, The Medium, with, of course, the original Silent Hill composer as well involved. We would see the many rumors and leaks and stuff come out throughout the year for news and things. One rumor, which sadly was just a rumor, and it's kind of depressing, that fact, it would end up being only a rumor. That being, of course, a supposed leak about possibly a revival of a Konami IP called Bloody Roar, and unfortunately, it was just a rumor. Should know better than to ever give hopes up on a franchise that we'd like to see revived. Unfortunately, we would see ultimate versions of our DLC for games released throughout the year, such as, of course, Iceborne, or rather, Monster Hunter World. We would see the announcements for new Monster Hunter games also coming to the Switch. We would also, of course, get at the beginning of the year also a great platformer game named, as you see right here, Ori Will of the Wisps, which is a great game, not quite as good as Blind Forest, but still, I highly regard the game, and it was up there on my top 10 favorite games of the year. Also, we would see other genres, many of games we would see a new major Crash game get released in 2020, which I think is actually really cool, and I actually appreciate the fact they revived that series as well. But it was interesting, definitely, as a whole in gaming. We would see many great game sales, many game controversies like Evo, which would end up getting canceled for the year, which is a shame. We would also see an interesting limited release on the Nintendo Switch, a classic 2D fighting game. Of course, that being Skullgirls Second Encore. We would also see many other games get interestingly regular physical releases. We would get many great limited run game releases, and this became also, in my opinion, 2020 was a big year for limited run games, as it has massively grown over time. For being only a 5-year-old company, it's grown quite fast, especially over the past year because of people like myself who are big backers and supporters of physical media over digital media. That is a topic I might talk about sometime in the future in a vlog. Maybe depending on whether people would like to hear the debate and the viewpoint of physical versus digital media. But with that said, there's been many other things throughout the year, great in nerd culture, like comic books, and of course we had the nightness that was the COVID-19, which led to actually helping a company survive, believe it or not. Thanks to COVID, not a good thing, but thanks to COVID, it allowed a company named GameStop to survive, at least for a little while longer. And helped save jobs as well, thanks to that. Also, we would see basically the downfall of the cinema as a whole, unfortunately. COVID, businesses that have hurt the most from the whole situation, movie theaters have hurt the most. The fact that AMC is barely hanging on at the moment. Regal Cinema right now in the US, all screens are shut down by their parent company, that being Cineworld. Also, right now, the only major chain that's actually doing halfway decent is Cinemark, strangely enough. I'm glad just because the only theaters near me are all Cinemarks. Well, and a marquee cinema. But with that said, get ready to wrap this up. But this was just a little refresher and a little bit of a basic rundown of some of what went on in gaming in the year. The Switch would get many great games throughout the year. We would see a new Hyrule Warriors game. We would see, of course, many other great Nintendo Switch games get released over the year. We would get the limited edition, of course, Mario 3D All Stars. We would also get the release of the special limited edition Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch, and many other things throughout the year. This was a pretty good year for the Nintendo Switch by a far margin. We would also it would be a pretty good year for Sony. For the most part, they would have some major titles, and then some major controversies, like of course, the Video Game Awards was a major controversy for the year, which I'm not going to get into, given what happened before when I tried to give my opinion, a little rant video on the Game Awards. So, I'm not going to get into that discussion. Now, with that said, we saw many other things throughout the year. For companies like, of course, Square Enix, we would get to see a definitive version released for Dragon Quest XI. We would see, as I said, the Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. We would see a few other things. Unfortunately, announcement of no new Kingdom Hearts material until 2022. So 2021 is going to be completely empty when it comes to Kingdom Hearts. Speaking of also 2020, we would see the DLC in the beginning of the year called Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind, which had a little add-on to the regular story mode. Also, you would have some heck super hard boss battles in the data battles. And boy, are they a pain. Speaking, given I had to grind to level 100 to even really survive any of the boss battles. Yeah, pretty hard. Also, we would see many other things throughout the year as well. We would see a few things from Microsoft, like I said, Ori, Will of the Wisps. We would see physical release of the Blind Force and Will of the Wisp, both for the Nintendo Switch, which is awesome. And many other great indie games, and a indie game I decided to pick up at the end of the year because it was on sale for Nintendo Switch, Hades. So I can't wait to start trying out the Hades game and give my thoughts on it. Also, we would see a major releases, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Probably the biggest thing of the year. Well, then in the insane sales numbers, that was Animal Crossing New Horizon, which last time I checked has now sold something like 20 million copies, which is ridiculous. Not an Animal Crossing fan, I just could never get into the game. It's an acquired taste, much like I love Minecraft and some people don't like Minecraft. We would also get the release of a major, huge free-to-play game for the year, that being Genshin Impact, in my opinion, the definitive free-to-play game. I think it is how free-to-play games should be in the future. But anyways, cut up this short little rehash of some of the stuff. Too many things in gaming to talk about for 2020. But with that said, I hope everyone has a good 2021. Stay safe. And the crazy times we are in, hopefully we don't end up having more stuff go on the Apocalypse Bingo board that I ended up having for last year because of how things were going. At least the last thing on my Apocalypse Bingo board didn't happen, that being an alien invasion. That hasn't happened yet, and there's been no zombie apocalypse yet, thank goodness. But with that said, I'll see everyone soon enough. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.